Okay, before I do anything, I want to clean this. It's been bugging me every single time I take a video from a low down angle. Not good. The one problem is, the last time I tried to clean one of these, I fell through. So of course, I really hope that doesn't happen today. I did it. And I didn't fall through this time. Now that that is done, I want to talk to you today about my first power hammer, which is a 60 kilogram Sahinler power hammer. Give you a little bit of rundown about how these things work, how I was able to get it, and my thoughts on it, and how it's been useful to me. Right, so this is a power hammer. Specifically, an electro-pneumatic forging hammer. And the idea is that takes some of the work away from our arm, and it lets a machine do it. This means that we can work more efficiently, it means we can work larger stock, and it means that we don't have to work with the help of an assistant striking for us. The idea is, this thing goes up and down really fast on this particular machine at about 220 times per minute, and then the dies, which you can change out and put different dies in, then hit together and forge your material much faster than we could do by hand. This here is the ram, which on a machine like this is also a pneumatic cylinder. Because when this ram comes down, you'll see that there's nothing else lifting up and down the ram apart from this. This thing is fundamentally an air mover. What there is a motor, 7.5 horsepower motor in this case. This is 3-phase, and it is turning 3 belts that in turn is turning a very large and heavy flywheel. On that flywheel, there is a crank attached off-center to the flywheel, which is then crank moves piston up. Air compresses here, shoots through a valve assembly there, either exhausts the air out the top, or when the treadle is down, shoots the air across to the top of the ram cylinder. Now, when the piston comes down, the top half of the system is exposed to atmospheric pressure, the bottom half is pressurized, pushes air into the bottom of the ram cylinder, whatchamawat's-it, and forces the ram back up. So that means when this flywheel is spinning away, this machine is always running. Something to remember about power hammers. They will kill you 15 times over or 100 times over if they have the opportunity. These things are very strong, built of very strong material. As long as that treadle is down and the flywheel is turning, it's gonna be hammering with the full amount of force it can hammer with, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. There is no emergency cutoff switch where you can suddenly stop the machine. There is no way that you can stop the flywheel from suddenly turning. When that ram is hitting, it's gonna keep hitting until that flywheel has stopped. So, let that be a cautionary tale to you to not put your hands between the power hammers, as that's a bad idea. Don't get your head too close to the power hammer either, as that would be a terrible day, and I would feel horribly sorry for the person that then had to come in the next morning and switch off your machine. There would not be much of you left. But they're very fun machines, so let's not let that dissuade you from using a power hammer. So why is this air? What's great about a pneumatic forging hammer? Well, what's good is, basically it's giving you the flexibility to work whatever size stock you want, and that's the real advantage of the pneumatic hammer. It also means that you do have a little bit of that pressure behind the blow to kind of help squeeze it, which you might not otherwise have in a mechanical hammer, where, as opposed to it being the air under pressure that's giving you that spring that stops your machine from falling apart when you do different sizes of work, but you have the spring, you don't quite have that same amount of squeeze that you might have on a machine that's pressurizing the air behind the blow. Engage brain before using machine. So what's the story with me and this power hammer? Well, this was the first power hammer I bought, and I thought I'd tell you a few things about what it's like buying your first power hammer, and how you could go about it, and whether it's a good thing or whether it's a bad thing, and I don't know, I'm just gonna speak for a little while. So this is not a machine I've had a huge amount of luck with. Now, it's been great for my business, it's been essential to have, but it's got some serious control issues. It was bought factory refurbished, and you know, for something that had been through the factory and had been completely stripped down and completely redone, I would have thought I'd get some more control out of this thing. Really, it's a difficult beast to tame. There are definite construction errors in the way this is made. There are cracks in the frame, which appeared. I sent it back to the people that I bought it from, and they welded it up, and of course, you know, if a thing's gonna crack, it's gonna crack when there's a weld there, so those cracks have opened back up. This was bought because I had a commission lined up. So I had a commission lined up to make this big heron family or crane family sculpture of the design of Brown Brazil for a local hotel, and which was great, you know, because businessman wanted this, you know, a really nice piece of work to have outside his hotel, and you know, he clearly wanted to kind of help support what it is that I was doing and my endeavors, you know, starting up this venture, starting up my blacksmithing business, and you know, he wants this nice sculpture, so it's great because I have this big sculpture to make, you know, which is a, you know, a 5,000 pound sculpture or so, and I have a machine that I want to buy, which is right at about 5,000 pounds. You can work out how it happened. The sculpture was made, machine was paid for with that sculpture. That's a great way of buying yourself your first power hammer, especially considering that it's a lot easier to make the money to buy a power hammer with a power hammer than without a power hammer. So, I'd say there was a good deal of luck in that coming about at that time, and that's something I'm very appreciative of, and I'm very aware of, that there was a good deal of luck in that commission coming right about the time that I moved into this workshop and realized there was 3 phases for me to be able to actually run this kind of machine. But definitely, if you can find a way, wrangle a way to be able to line a job up that's going to require the power hammer first, that's the best way of getting your power hammer, because you can take the deposit, get yourself a loan to buy the power hammer or do whatever, you know, or even the deposit might be large enough that you can go ahead and buy the power hammer straight away. But getting the power hammer in, how about that? Let's talk about that. Now, at that time, I was a complete novice in the world of handling machines, handling the kind of logistics that go on with receiving a heavy bit of equipment. This thing weighs 1.2 tons or something, right? You know, it's a big old beast. So I was very nervous and very worried about what actually happens when you get one of these things, right? So, for me, this was shipped to me on a pallet. Well, it wasn't really a pallet. They had some 4-inch by 4-inch pine beams underneath it that the machine was bolted to, and that's how it was shipped via a pallet shipping company. So really, it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. All you gotta do is have the use of a forklift to get it off the machine, and then it was simply a case of forklifting it in and putting it in place and putting it on the base. Now, you might ask yourself, but I don't have a forklift. That's actually not a big deal. I always thought that'd be a big deal. Luckily, I'm in the good position where I have neighbors that have forklift, and you know, they're always like, "Ah, yeah, Alec, you know, we'll move your machine for you." You know, they've moved most of my machines for me, but there have been times where I've needed to rent forklifts, and that's easy. Literally go on Google, type in forklift rental in your area, and you will find somebody that is going to be more than happy to come and drive a forklift for you to move your machine, and it's not going to be super expensive. I've had to do this before, and I was paying in the region of £150 to have somebody come out for an hour with a forklift, move it around, and take his forklift back. You know, so you could expect between kind of $200 and $500 to get somebody to offload and put your power hammer in place with a forklift. Now, you also are probably going to want to know what to do in the realm of bases for your power hammer. So, as you can see, this base is frickin' good. This thing is made out of 5-inch round blocks of solid steel, sandwiched between 5/8-inch solid plate. This base cost me about £800 in total to build, and I think that was completely worth it. A lot of people suggest just, you know, say, oh, throw it on some railway sleepers and that'll do just fine. Well, here's the thing, you throw it on railway sleepers, you throw it on wood, you're just not gonna get the return that you would get when you got a nice solid foundation underneath your machine, because that wood is spongy and you lose energy to the blow. You must remember, though this is technically, you know, it's called a one-piece machine, really it's a 2-piece machine. The anvil is not solid to the frame, it's merely bolted. There is movement that can happen, and when you have a soft, spongy base, that anvil is gonna start moving with the power hammer, and you're not quite gonna get the performance that you would otherwise get with a nice solid foundation and attachment. The anvils on these Turkish breeds of hammers are notoriously light. This anvil only weighs about 300 kilograms, which for a 60-kilogram ram is pretty small. Ideally, that anvil wants to be 2 or 3 times as heavy. Certainly 3 times as heavy would be ideal. So what did I do to combat that problem? I put half a ton of steel under my power hammer. I have between 8 and 10 inches of concrete here, and this is just sat straight on the concrete. No cracking in the concrete, it's all been great. And, you know, I have other power hammers on the concrete that'll sometimes be running at the same time. No cracking, no issues with the concrete with 8 to 10 inches. Now, the people that sell these things, they'll say, you know, you want at least 6 inches of concrete. Yeah, you probably do. If you got much less, you might want to go ahead and cut yourself out a hole in the concrete with a concrete saw, dig a 3-foot deep hole, isolate around the edges of that. There are a lot of ways people do that. Sometimes they'll put like insulation board and then pour and fill up that hole with concrete, ideally with your studs for the machine sticking out. So you'd make yourself out a frame that's the same size as the machine, you'd put it at the bottom with the studs sticking up, fill the whole thing up with concrete, and that isolation with the insulation material, or whether you do it with plywood, means that you get that away from the rest of your concrete pad, which is great because one of the downsides about having the power hammer sat on your normal concrete pad is that you end up making the entire pad act as some sort of tuning fork, and it makes it extremely loud and vibrates all your tools, and everything's shaking off stuff and falling on the ground. So if you can isolate it, that's always good. It also keeps the noise down, which is great if you have neighbors that are a little bit nearby. In regards to fixing one of these bad boys to the ground, you're gonna wanna, if you don't have studs already sticking out from a concrete pad that you've poured, you're gonna wanna go ahead and use chemical anchors. They are the best fixing for concrete. Get yourself a good quality Vinylista resin chemical anchor, the best that you can get. Don't worry about the cost, it's good. And that's how all of the machines in my workshop are secured, with Vinylista resin chemical anchor fixings. You drill the hole, you clean it out, you blow it out, you make sure there's no dust, you put the resin in, you put your stud in, and by God, that stuff is strong as hell. It's great stuff. But the trouble with using those expansion bolts is you're damaging the structural integrity of the concrete. You don't want that to happen. That's bad, especially if you're in a rented unit. Here, if I ever leave, well, I'm gonna leave at some point, all I gotta do is trim them off, and that concrete is strong as can be. All it's just got is some steel studs in there with a fixing that's stronger than the concrete itself, which is great. Oh. You see that little chock block that I put in there? The reason for that is just so I don't have the dies slapped together at startup. A lot of people, they put it up there because they don't want to get grit on the ram. However, these Sahinlers in particular, they do have a wiper, so you shouldn't really have to worry about getting too much grit on the ram. Keeps the dies apart, means I can change them without having to turn the power hammer back on. One of the things that I've done on this particular power hammer, which I think is great, is I have put this extension on, and instead of lowering this to the right height, I put a piece of flat bar. Because here, what you do is you gotta get your foot up another 1.25 inches until you can start manipulating the treadle. Here, you've only got to get your foot up another 1/2 inch. That means that you do have a longer stroke capability, which is good, because the longer the stroke, the more controllability you have. And as opposed to you having your foot on here, where you then have another inch to lift your foot up, which means you have to shorten your stroke by another inch. I also like this flat bar because it gives me these corners which I can go ahead and hook my toe onto much easier than on a round where you kind of have a tendency to want to slip off. Very nice like this with those little corners. Very nice to manipulate it. It's really a good idea so that whenever you're running your power hammer, you can have your feet stable. You want to be stable. You don't want to have to balance it with 1 foot on the ground, 1 foot in midair. You want to have a heel on the ground when you're running your power hammer. This way you're stable, this way you're not going to hurt your knees. So I hope you've enjoyed that little tour of my first power hammer, the Sahinler SM60, which is about 132 pounds, by the way, I haven't said it yet. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Tomorrow, you're going to see me talk about this, which is the Pilkington. I hope you're going to enjoy that. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this has been educational, and I hope this has helped you make the right decisions for when you buy your hammer in the near future. Hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and have